Hi, Anders.
Hey guys.
Hi, Tina. Where were you? I was starting to get so worried.
No, sorry, I'm here. I can whenever you guys are ready, I can open the channel. Let me just warn
Let's
everybody.
do it. Let's give him those 30-second bonus seconds right now. Go.
Alrighty.
So while she opens that up and the flood of questions happens,
There
um,
we go.
want to introduce everybody to Anders, an engineer here at the shop, and has been working really, full time quite a while now on AI systems. And we're a small company, so he bounces around a bit, but I'm sure he'll also spend still significant time on AI systems as we close things out. So if you weren't here this morning, you guys, I think, are in for a good AMA. So let's do this thing. Anders, how does the AI react to getting hit by an enemy they can't target or see? If I have ECM, shoot an enemy in the back and move behind a drill before they have time to turn around and see me. Oh, he's trying to trick us there with that.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we've considered that situation. What happens is the AI understands the direction it got hit from. It doesn't necessarily know where you are exactly, but it knows, hey, I got hit in the back. Uh, I'm gonna turn around and walk in that direction and see if I can find, who was shooting me. And the AI will then attempt to go, as far as it thinks it needs to, and look around to see if it can find whoever was attacking it. If it sees you, it's going to engage. If it can't find you, well, then it's going to go into back to what it was doing, but it might be more alert and ready to watch, for anyone coming back at it again.
Very good. We got this one this morning a bit, I think. Um, will enemy AI attempt to disengage from a losing battle, especially lights?
Yes, they absolutely will. Lights right now, if the battle is turning against them, your whole lance is alive, for instance, and the enemy only has one or two light mechs left, they might decide we just can't handle this anymore, and they'll run away. They'll try to find somewhere to hide from you, or they might try to find other enemy mechs, other enemy forces to pull you into an ambush and get back into a big firefight. So yeah, you're going to see some stuff like that.
In this morning's AMA, you declared most of the AI behavior is based on the aggro system. I'm wondering what happens when new enemies arrive to an in-progress skirmish and haven't yet been fired upon. Yeah, that is a good question. If they inherit that aggro table, or if they then go proximity aggro upon arriving.
Okay, so if new enemies show up to a battle, it's a couple of factors. So each unit has an aggro value. And this is based on essentially how much damage it's been doing in the last however many seconds. Let's say 15 for argument's sake. Um, so if you're pumping out a lot of damage, a lot of damage, a lot of damage, your aggro value is going to be high compared to someone who is maybe poking out from around a hill and maybe fires an AC2 and then runs and hides again. Um, this aggro value by itself, though, isn't enough to determine who should be fighting whom. So, in the case of a new group of enemies showing up, they'll see your squad, possibly engaged in combat, possibly just doing whatever you're doing. Those aggro values will still exist from the current fight you've been in, but they'll be modified by a bunch of other factors. How likely the AI is to coordinate in picking their target, how far away they are, whether they can see them or not. Meaning, like, if they're directly behind a mech, they'll probably prioritize picking someone else. Stuff like that.
Will the AI ever commit friendly fire?
Not intentionally. So if you run in front of someone, there's a chance that, if they're already firing their laser and you run in front of it, you're going to get hit. Same with the AI running in front of their allies. That being said, we've tried to make it so that that will happen as rarely as possible. You have to pretty deliberately try to make it happen.
Right. What landscape commands will be available? So we're keeping it fairly simple. We have follow me, go to location, attack my target. We have hold fire and fire at will. So it's kind of like swapping them back into they're kind of by default sort of like in a fire at will engage as they're following you, but you can specifically put them into a hold fire if you want to get run to the evac point, let's say, and not have them be distracted by trying to shoot anything. And that's pretty much it. It's just not like it's possible we could add another command, but again, we're trying to keep this an action game, not trying to get too squad based and kind of bog things down with too much. So did I forget one? I don't think I did. I think that's what we have at the moment.
Attack, follow, go to location, hold fire are the current ones.
Right. Then saying attack again, I guess, obviously puts them back into a free firing mode.
Yes, correct.
What landscape? Okay, I just did that one. Tina's failing me here. Ugh. Friendly pilots, can they be hired and fired? Yes, they can. So there's the what do we call it? I guess it's the MRBC board where they are listed, and just like you expect from past MechWarrior, Mech Commander, whatever games, BattleTech, there they are. And if there's some available, they have a hiring cost. There's an initial hiring cost, and then obviously a monthly salary cost. And you're going to want to do that at times, whether your guys die or if there's someone that's a lot more advanced that you'd like to pay for. I guess it all comes down to finances, but yes, you can. Thank you, Spectre, for the Wii. Oh yeah, I was reading ahead of this Jaden Hayes one. This is interesting. Certainly something we've thought about, but will an AI player take control if I'm playing co-op and my connection suddenly cuts out? And then if so, how would the XP be handled for the AI players? I'm not sure we're going to do this. Obviously, this is something we've talked about, and I think obviously for our minimum sort of like goal would be to get co-op totally working well and kind of say, too bad, so sad, if your connection cut out. But I don't know. I think this falls in one of those categories of like, it's still something we need to talk about internally and kind of decide if this is something we want to do, and if it's something we want to do, if it's something we can do with how much effort. So I don't know. Have you guys talked much about this yet, Anders? Like, I know the conversations come up. I just don't know if it's been resolved, if it's within scope to be able to do something like this or not.
So as far as I know, we are currently making it so that the AI does take over if a player drops. There are technical reasons for why like a unit has to always have a pilot. So I think what we've settled on is it just happens. I'm not sure if that's going to change before launch.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's one of those things we're still working with, but sounds reasonable. I mean, of course, it's logical. I mean, if you just have one co-op friend with you, you're going to be taking two AI pilots with you. So, it seems logical if your guy cuts out or has to bail, like, oh my goodness, my wife's home, I need to log off like right now or I'm dead, and don't want that mission to go to waste. So thanks for the question. I think it gives us, renewed focus on thinking about that problem.
Okay, so the next question's about
Predictability.
is the AI going to be boring by being too predictable? So our goal with any individual AI unit is to make it interesting for the player to engage with. Depending on what the unit is, it may be more or less interesting. A tank, for instance, is sort of designed to be this fodder type of unit where, it can be a threat, it can be damaging, but it's really easy to kill it. It's not something where it's going to be super tactical in what it's doing. Whereas, with mechs, they have a lot more that they can do. They are much more interesting opponents to fight and to have to deal with. That being said, like any individual mech, there's a certain amount of predictability that we actually do want, so that as a player, when you're going up against it, okay, this is this is the weak point on this mech. This is where it stores all its ammo. This is where its biggest gun is. And we want behaviors that allow the player to feel mastery and to be able to exploit what the AI is doing. Not exploit in terms of completely break the game, but be able to say, hey, I did something awesome, and now, I have a chance to really put damage into this guy. If we're building something like a boss enemy, that's where we would probably throw something where it's less predictable in terms of, maybe you've been fighting, I'm going to throw it, an Atlas, many, many missions. You've played one mission, you saw an Atlas, you played the next mission, you saw an Atlas, and now you've come up against this boss that's also an Atlas, but that boss might have unique behaviors. He might, stay really far at range because he's modified it and has 2 PPCs or something in there. Or maybe he's the most aggressive opponent you'll ever fight, and he's always trying to get behind you. And, you have to be really careful to not let him do that, because, he'll unload, multiple AC-20s into your back. So yeah, like there will be some predictability, but hopefully, based on the kinds of units that you're fighting at the same time, there will be enough variety that each engagement feels interesting.
It's true. There is a bit of an advantage there for us compared to, say, a human-based shooter, which you're always fighting human, enemies, which might just follow the same tactics. But when you potentially are going up against, like, even if you look at the MechCon mission, where there's a dropship that comes in and there's a Cicada, a Banshee, and a Commando. And we didn't even have anywhere near as many AI behaviors in then at MechCon as we do now. It's probably 3 or 4 times as much as what they can do. But even then, it was quite different, because obviously the Banshee was really a tank, just like face tanking and, coming at you. A bit of circle strafing, but mostly, full on a frontal. And then you have the Commando was just buzzing around your ankles the whole time. So yeah, I good question though. Obviously you're right, predictability of AI can be an issue, so whereas we can be of that. The managing heat, how does AI manage heat, chainfire override? Yeah, that's a good question. I think they do some of those things, and maybe we'll do more, but what do we have now and what do we expect?
So right now, the AI does support chainfire. There's no technical reason why it wouldn't support overriding, but from a design decision and through playtesting a lot, it's really hard to notice it overriding. If you're watching it in a fight, you can't really tell that that's what it's done. So as a player fighting against an overridden AI, you just keep getting shot and nothing seems to be happening, and you get really confused, like, why is he able to shoot so often? Why is he not, why can't he, or why is he not spreading his shots out? Why did he suddenly, lose an arm or a leg? And after the fact, you're like, oh, of course he must have gone into override and, he went crazy with it. But it's not intuitive. It feels like a bug. So the AI right now will not override. It will try to manage its heat. Um, for any given shot, it will say, "Hey, should I overheat on this shot?" Um, and this is affected by the skill level of the pilot. A really unskilled pilot might say, every 3 or 4 shots, yeah, I'm gonna, maybe I'll allow myself to overheat when I take this shot. Whereas a really experienced pilot might say, I'm just never going to overheat, even if that means I have to really spread my shots out. Um, so you will see some mechs, especially lower skill mechs, where they do shut down for a little bit because they overheat.
Of course, everyone listening right now is saying, well, really good pilots would overheat some, right? Like would push that line. Like you think of an MWO pilot that knows how to, ride that cusp of like taking a little bit of internal damage or just riding that cusp. So I think for a really skilled pilot, it would be possible also for you to make them more aggressive in that sense that they would decide to overheat, but not to the point of shutting down, so that they're putting out maximum DPS without shutting down.
Yes, like the AI, like especially those really high skill level AI, absolutely. Like they will ride that line where, because they are the AI, they know exactly how much heat they're going to generate. They know exactly how much heat they have, and they can say, okay, I can pump out, 4 medium lasers right now, and I won't overheat. Whereas a human player might overheat and might need to override to make sure they don't shut down. So yes, stuff like that will happen.
Cool. I'm not sure if I understand this vehicle question on scripts. You know what he's saying?
I think he's asking about the behavior of tanks and VTOLs.
Right. So they're mostly just based on the type of vehicle they are and the loadout they have. And I think that's fair.
Yes, I think so. So the scripts, as you're calling them, the behaviors that we run for the fodder AI units, they are on an individual level. That being said, we do have systems above them that will coordinate and say, hey, this group of units, go out here and investigate this disturbance, or go on a patrol and stay in a formation, stuff like that. In terms of how they're engaging within a battle itself, there's a bit of coordination in terms of the units trying to avoid each other and trying to move to get optimal firing lanes for themselves, which gives the appearance of something really coordinated. There is not, and there's certainly the possibility to add higher level group management and group tactics to that. But in practice, we haven't found that we've needed to do something like that to get engaging behavior.
Do different factions have different AI? I would say, like we answered this a few times this morning, but I think I think it's more about the elite level, like the reputation level of and the difficulty level of the contract you're accepting, more than anything. We have said that, like, sure, if you're on the periphery and you're fighting like unequipped pilots or like pirate mechs, or their skill level's lower, and so definitely they will be easier and have a different AI of sorts. But I think of it less as a different AI and just less and more as lower values within that AI system, is how I think I would answer that. Will the AI be able to find stealth armored ECMX? How will those systems work with AI? Yeah, we've answered this a few times as well. I mean, first off, I don't believe stealth armor's in our timeline. But we do have ECMX. And so I think you have the concept of sensors, was also just a concept of line of sight, right, Anders? So I know this is something we've been working on fairly recently. And how is this solution working out?
So this is something where essentially the AI sensors are going to be reduced if they run into ECM. What that will mean is, they can't necessarily get target locks for raining down missiles, potentially. They won't be able to detect that you're there until you're much closer, potentially, possibly even within the ECM bubble, depending on tuning and just how it feels. Um, there's going to be systems in place, so like if they're being shot, they're still going to know that they're being shot. If you're stomping through trees or a wall and breaking everything, they're still going to hear you doing that and come and investigate. So it's not entirely dependent on the sensors. But yes, ECM will have some effect, and the AI will be affected and be able to work around it.
Can you have more than 3 pilots in your crew? Yes, you can. I'm not even positive if there is a limit. I think there is. We have a limit on chassis in the Leopard class, and it's not 4, just for those more than that. But yeah, you can. You can have 6, 8, 10. I'm not sure exactly what the cap is, but you can. And obviously, the value of that would be training up additional ones, and in case some die. And the part that I'm a little uncertain of at the moment is the concept of injured pilots. And I guess I'll just throw this out there is I want to be careful with how much we go down sort of the I don't know, I want to call it like RPG or kind of turn-based management type of stuff that you kind of saw in Battletech and stuff. Like that stuff's really great for that type of game, but you want to be careful about it in a real-time simulation game like a MechWarrior product. But I also do see the great advantage of it's really the main reason to have pilots beyond 3, right? Is when some are injured. So we're still kind of thinking about that concept, but to answer the question, yes, you can hire more than 3. Do enemy pilots eject? They don't currently, but as we mentioned this morning, we're thinking long and hard about this, because even if just primarily you get into these situations where you're having this great battle, it's wonderful, everything's like, wow, this is amazing, and then the enemy mech gets stripped down to like a pogo stick. It's like armless, 0 weapons. It's got nothing left. It's just kind of like wandering around, limping around, looking stupid. So in that case, I think we're going to need a solution, like whether it's like the surrender message in the shutdown or eject, but something beyond just sort of like limping around until you finish them off. Will it ever be possible that the AI for Lance mates you keep around for almost the entire game might be more likely to take fatal hits for you when you're under file, like a loyalty system? I'm just going to go ahead and say no on that, but I'm not sure. I don't think that's ever come up, has it? I think it's just how good they get. That's the key, like how elitely skilled they become.
Yes, we have not considered doing something like this, just because as a player, like, it's nice that your buddy's taking a bullet for you, but the flip side of that also is now you can't dish out any more damage to the guy who's shooting at you. It is definitely something that could be done, but there are a lot of considerations involved in it, where it may just take away too much from gameplay and player agency. So that one moment of cool leads to a huge moment of frustration. And if the AI ever decides to body block when you don't need it to, you're just going to be really, really frustrated by it.
Yeah, I think that's true. Will the AI perform hit and run attacks when outgunned, or will they simply fully surrender? I'm going to kind of translate this question a little bit. The interesting part of it, I think, is the concept of switching behaviors based on how damaged they are. And I don't think we have something like that yet. It's an interesting thought. So like right now, like you have that catapult like fighting at range for its LRMs, or let's maybe a better example is the brawling centurion fighting in a brawling range, but once its auto cannons and everything's been knocked out, Actually, now that I'm talking out loud, I think you do see these behaviors, don't you, Anders? Like in that case where the autocannon and SRM missiles are destroyed, but I still have my LRM-10 on the Centurion. He's probably going to back to range to use those LRMs. So I think he will start to change his fighting tactics based on what functioning weapons he has, if that kind of answers your question.
Yes, the AI will definitely change behavior based on what weapons they still have available. That includes weapons that have been destroyed, weapons that have run out of ammo. All of that affects their decision. In terms of if they've been damaged too much or not, we currently don't make them change their behavior on this, again, due to player frustration reasons. If you start damaging an enemy and they start, every time or almost every time they get really damaged, they just start running away. If you leave them, now you have to go chase them down somewhere, and you don't necessarily know where they've gone. It's not a fun experience. Conversely, if they stay in there fighting, or maybe if you are chasing them down immediately after they run, then it's not a fun experience because you just stay behind them and blast them, and there's nothing engaging there. There's no challenge. It's fish in a barrel, right?
I like this next question. If you got like your LRM boat in the back being attacked, does it call up for help? And I think we could generalize this for AI pilots, just as simply, essentially calling out for help if they're taking a lot of damage. And I think the answer to that is yes. Like, we have a pretty robust pilot dialogue system. I don't think I've seen this specific dialogue added to the game yet, like it wasn't in the MechCon demo that I recall, but this is certainly within the pilot dialogue system, is it not, Anders?
It should be, yeah. Like, this is definitely something where the AI will say, "Hey, I'm under attack," or "Get some," or whatever it is that's appropriate. In terms of actual gameplay behavior and reactions, it depends on how much threat they're under. So if they're taking a lot of damage, the people that are attacking them are going to be building up a lot of aggro, and the other AI around will see that and notice and say, "Hey, I need to go help my buddy." And they'll start trying to take out the guys who are targeting him.
Basically, this next question is about, will the AI receive like commands from your co-op friend besides just the host? And the answer is no. The host is the commander, and he issues the commands. The part I think that we're still tweaking is, are we in deciding on, and maybe you guys have talked about this out in the AI team or something, Anders, but will the co-op player see the orders being issued in some way, or are we just relying on VoIP for that? Like, if the commander wants all the AI to focus down a target, the AI are going to get that command and go do that. But the co-op player who's taking the place of one of the AI pilots, how does he receive that command? I think that's the question mark I still have for the team. If we're communicating that in the HUD, or saying, "Hey, these are buddies that just started the co-op game, they should be on VoIP." But I don't know. Any thoughts on that aspect?
In terms of the AI, I'm not sure what the remote player is going to see in terms of what the AI is doing. I know right now we have plans to make it so that if you issue a command to your co-op friend, they will see some sort of marker in the world. Go here, attack this, follow me, etc.
Right. Okay.
I don't know if they're going to see anything besides essentially what job the AI is doing in the status squad window.
Right. Or
in the world.
What you've been assigned to do from the host, essentially, is what you should be seeing, right? Because you're like one of his 3 pilots, and say 2 are AI and 1's you. But if he tells all of the pilots to focuses target, then you're going to receive that command just like the AI did, and so on.
Yes.
Okay, crew members like mechanics, logistics, doctors, etc. Can they be hired and fired? And techs, mechanics. This is, I'll put this in the category of stretch goal. There's definitely not like logistics and doctors and things, but besides the pilots, there is the notion of the technicians. And right now, I'm not sure if we're going to get into the complexity of hiring mechanics and technicians, or if they'll simply be like an inflated aspect of your monthly costs as you get a bigger and bigger crew. I'm leaning more towards the latter because I think there's more important things to focus on. But at the very least, as you get more mechs and get bigger mechs and get a, like an entire assault lance plus, so on and so forth, you're going to have a lot more technicians in the bay, a lot more technicians hovering around the place, basically insinuating that it's a bigger operation and then your monthly, bill gets a lot bigger for operating your mercenary unit. But yeah, I think there's no real reason to go that extra step on hiring them and firing the technicians unless you open up an entire other aspect of the game, which would be rad. I agree. Like, it's all sorts of abilities and things that the technicians can do. I think that sounds amazing. It's probably on the really nice to have list, and maybe probably leaning much more towards future expansions of the game concept. But at the very least, there is the notion of having technicians as the bigger you get. The next one on these narc and tag and things.
So in regards to support weapons, narc, tag, they are in the game. The AI can use them. In terms of how they're reacting to it, I think they're going to react basically how you expect. There's nothing really special about them except they enable you, to have more LRM fire, right? And to know that a target is there. So the AI has an internal target sharing system, so it knows, hey, this guy exists and this is where he is. If it's tagged or if there's a narc, yeah, like all of that just works, or at least it should be.
I like answers where it just works. I love. Answer to DJ Edio, yes, you can go into a co-op game with just one friend and the other two will be AI. So it's any combination of real people and AI. Inter, thank you for your answer. You're welcome. Enigma of the Dragon, whether it be AI lances that assist you while you have players in your own lance. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's essentially friendly NPCs, whether they're vehicles or whether there's already one story mission in particular where there's a friendly mech that's fighting on your side that you're not giving him commands, but he's there. And so yes, you'll see that throughout the missions. Yeah, I would say you said the lance mate's fully voiced. I think they're fairly fully voiced. I mean, they have quite a range of things they can talk about and comment on in the mission. Some of it's like canned, like scripted lines in a story mission, and then other stuff is based on their AI behaviors, like they spot enemies that are taking fire, or they killed something, or if you give them a command to attack your target, they'll say confirmation. And so there's all the things you'd expect. Will we see any like callback names and stuff to previous MechWarrior and Battletech games? I don't know. That's a cool idea. I think it's kind of up to the designers, get on Alex Garden's case, and people that are writing a lot of stuff to just remember to do that, and do that kind of stuff. But at the same time, like our storyline was written, as you know, from Randall Bills and stuff, so we have a fresh, unique, new story written for this game. But obviously for the pilots, a lot of those we're just coming up with. So yeah, there's opportunities for that. Will AI shoot through destructible environments to hit you, Anders?
Yes, depending on the situation, they will. So in regards to that, if the AI knows where you are and say you're hiding behind a water tower or something it knows it can blow up, it's going to just blast through that thing and try to get to you as directly as possible. But if you're behind a really thick wall, or you've got multiple things between you and the AI, then it's going to say, okay, well, it would take too much fire to break through all this stuff. I'm going to just try to go around it and try to get a better shot at you. Any plans for a waypoint system? There are currently no plans for a detailed waypoint system. The most we're letting you do right now is say, hey, go over here. Anything more than that, we're trying to keep the focus on the action in this game, not making it a super tactical squad-based game. Can you select which pilot a friend is standing in for? Like if you wanted to skill up a specific pilot. Yes, so this is more not directly to do with the game AI. This is more the metagame side of things. So my information might be a little outdated on this, but as far as I know, the plan for that is that before a mission, you assign your pilots to your Lance of Mechs, and then you can say which human player is associated with which pilot. So if you have two pilots you really want to train up, I think the host always has to be the main player character, but if you have another guy you want to train up, you can say, hey, this is my buddy, you get to play as this pilot, and then anything they do counts towards that pilot.
Wonderful. I had a call come in, so I missed a little bit there. So you're at Snuffleupagus question?
Yes. So will AI teammates have a preference towards certain mech builds and playstyles, such as a brawler getting increased accuracy with SRMs? So the playstyle is going to be primarily dependent on what mech they're in. The AI is going to react based on what mech they're in, what the loadout is. That being said, each individual pilot will have these different skill levels and experience levels. So one of them might be very proficient with SRMs. That might mean they get an accuracy bonus or a damage, probably not a damage bonus, but some sort of bonus to go along with when they're using those SRMs. So there is not an inbuilt, excuse me, there's not an inbuilt preference for the AI to what they're doing, but they will have bonuses based on what they have been working with.
Roger that. Care to expand on pilot skills or pilot leveling system? I mean, we'll just touch on it as much as we did this morning, I think. There's a handful of pilot skills, and they go up with play. So as you take them out and they play, and you win mission or fail the mission, I suppose, at the end of that mission, it's going to do the calculations and automatically level up certain areas, level up their piloting, level up their shooting, avoidance, things like that. And you'll see the incremental improvements on the UI displayed, so you know like where and how they got better. Will AI focus damaged components? Will vehicles have multiple components? I'm going to answer the back half. Vehicles are one health bar, one at the moment. I think it's going to stay that way. To go further and to do multiple hit locations really means that we need to like model like damage components on the vehicles and have them behave like they just had the one thing blown off. And it's just, I think, an over complexity for something that should be creating a lot quicker action reward than something like that. It makes sense in biotech, I guess, where you pick the location, but I think for like having a bunch of tanks and vehicles and flyers all around you, you want to be dropping one of these things every few seconds in some of these brawls, and you don't want to be getting into trying to pick off a turret on a tank that's way down there. At least that's my view when it comes to a MechWarrior title. Not to mention, it's really not a realistic kind of effort, or the reward for the effort. It just really isn't there for the vehicles. And they will focus damage components at time, won't they? The AI.
Yeah, so I'm going to combine this with a question a little bit farther down, which is how is the AI going to choose which part of the mech to target? So each individual pilot has what we're calling a lethality rating. And this determines how likely it is to say, or which component it's going to target. The higher the lethality, the more likely it is to pick something that's going to already be damaged, that's going to cause significant problems for the mech that it's shooting at. A lower skill pilot is probably going to have a much lower lethality rating than a higher skilled pilot. So a lower skilled pilot is going to end up picking components essentially at random to say, I'm just going to try to hit him at all, and if I do damage, I'm winning. Whereas a more experienced pilot is going to say, if I just shoot his center torso every single time, he's going to die really fast. Or maybe, his legs are really damaged right now. If I go for the legs, he has no armor there. Let's just get them. So it's going to depend on the difficulty of the AI opponent you're up against and their individual ratings and personas.
If you have multiple target actions, can you split forces, divert some portion of your AI teammates? The answer to that is no, and it's for very, very important technical reasons. We really don't want to be simulating an entire battle 3 kilometers away on the host's computer that he's not even at. So there is a challenge here when it comes to co-op that we haven't, I guess, perfectly decided how we're going to handle yet. Because a co-op player can kind of run off in the direction they want to run off. But talking about your AI lance mates, there will be a limitation as to how far you can send them. And it also goes to the battle grid that you won't be giving them go-to location commands from the battle grid. It's because you can't say, go here, run across the entire map and wake up the entire map, and I'll just sit here and simulate the battle. Remember, the host is hosting. Even in a co-op game, there's a lot of information being processed on the host computer that the client computers are not. And so really it's important that you're fighting and playing as a lance. So the game is being designed around the concept of you're fighting and playing as a lance and going through the mission as a lance. On this co-op thing, could it be possible to play co-op with friendly AI, but in each lance example, you command a 5-man lance and your friend 2 at the same time? No, there's a 1 lance, it's 4 mechs, and when you invite your friend into your game, they take one of those spots, and you have 2 AI friendlies with you. And that's the same thing as whether whoever's hosting the game, it's whether that's like inviting someone into your campaign or even just using like the instant action manager screen and just setting up a, like a scenario and a match and playing it. That'd be the same thing.
Can the AI camp cover and peek around to fire, quickly withdrawing like players in MWO? So this is going to be something where it really depends on the kind of mech, and I sound like a broken record, but also its loadout. Light mechs and possibly mediums are much more likely to do this sort of peek out and poke and run back or run to the next cover point, just because they need that to survive. So we do have plans to support something like that. It's not going to be the same as MWO because as a player fighting against that, it's not really that fun because it's not a competitive player versus player. I'm trying to optimize and outsmart someone who's also trying to do the same thing to me. At the end of the day, we're trying to make the AI something that is interesting to engage with, but isn't necessarily the most optimal thing you could ever do as a person. So I hope that answers the question.
Trader AI. I mean, can you basically have a friendly, like an AI, I guess, lance mate that turns tail and starts fighting you in mid mission? I would say that could happen, but it would be a situation where we design that in a story mission, like your example in MechWarrior 2. Remember, in MechWarrior, in all the games, like all of the past MechWarrior games, I mean, even though you could choose the missions and things like MechWarrior 2, Mercenaries, or MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries, they really were like there's a pile of handcrafted missions, and you picked one of them, and it's like our story missions. So we have all these generated missions, but then we have our subset of story missions. So something like that would be very possible in one of the story missions. Can we play as the people we hire? Not in the sense of your own game. You're you, but when you're you as in your Commander Mason, and when you go into one of your friends' games as a co-op player, though, then yes, you'll be playing as the people they hired. It's the best I can do with that question. I think we answered Quinn Alred's about chassis specialties for pilot. I mean, will multiple playthroughs have different variety of enemies, mechs, even with the same difficulty level? I mean, yes, there's a number of ways this could happen. Number one, just because they're generated missions, you're going to get variety. It's going to be different. And it all depends where you are, too. So if you remember, there's 5 different starting locations, and you can travel all over the inner sphere, of course, but it costs money to travel. So you might find that in order to achieve elite mercenary status within the time frame, that you can't travel, or you're putting too much of your money towards traveling. So you're not going to see all the inner sphere. So there's so much replayability here where you could choose different starting locations each time, travel to different areas of the inner sphere each time, which means you're fighting different factions each time, which means you're finding different things in the market each time, and plus they're generated missions. And so I think replayability has been one of our biggest, design aspects that we've been chasing the whole time. A little early, Perry, to pitch in to talk about post-release plans. I think that'll happen like a lot of development cycles, in the sense that when you're making a game and you're the project managing it and you're shooting for a finish line, you have a set of features, and ultimately that set of features inevitably will be chipped away at in order to get your game done, and which creates a backlog of features, and that backlog always has priorities, and you then prioritize that backlog, and obviously the highest priority items on that backlog get put into post-release patches, and whether they're things that go into DLCs or expansion packs, or they're just stuff that make it into patches for free patches for the game. I think that kind of picture will start coming together during our beta phase. So it's going to be in the summer when we're pushing through beta towards the release cycle, that it's going to become clear what's going to slip into the backlog, and what's the technical debt, and how we're going to maybe what the priority of those things are after post-release. But right now I couldn't really guess as to what would be the top things post-release.
Will the
yes enemy... Quinn, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you go. My voice is going now.
Okay. Will the enemy AI react to your weapon loadouts? That is, try to outrange you, or try to close the distance if you're long ranged. The AI will not explicitly react to what your loadout is. What they'll do is they'll try to maintain their optimal range and their optimal tactic based on their current loadout and weapon states, to be able to fight you. So, if they're an LRM mech, for instance, they're going to try to back up and keep, out of your range as much as possible, because that's just where their range is. If you happen to also be long ranged, well, then you're both just fighting at long range and nothing really changes. Um, on the flip side of that, if they're a short range fighter, they're definitely going to be trying to close the distance. But that's regardless of if you're also a close range brawler or if you want to stay at range and snipe or whatever your loadout is. How does AI accuracy work in detail? Okay, so accuracy itself is pretty simple. Um, there's, depending on the pilot's skills, the pilot skill ratings, and I believe a difficulty factor. I'm not 100% on that, but I believe a difficulty factor. Uh, and the enemy that you're shooting at, their evasiveness, we combine it all together and we find, okay, here is some final, essentially, percent chance to hit. And it'll be higher or lower based on those factors I mentioned. Then we say, okay, well, roll a die. Do we hit? Sweet. Okay, let's pick, what component are we going to aim at? Should we go, based on our lethality, should we go for a really damaged one that we can blow off quickly? Maybe a leg, maybe a side torso connected to a big gun, um, or just pick something at random. Um, and that's most of it. There are some other factors to do with the lateral motion of the mechs. That is, if a guy's running sideways, and then suddenly stops, the AI has a moment where it's has to readjust and recalibrate its tracking. Um, but those are the main parts of the system.
Cool. Carry on.
So, will the AI ever turn on their own team? Example, if you friendly fire one of your own allies or an enemy hits another enemy too many times. So, we don't have any plans for the AI to respond to friendly fire. Reason being is we've tried very hard to minimize the amount of friendly fire the AI will ever do. It is a possibility that it happens, but they very explicitly try not to shoot at their allies, and they will deliberately stop shooting at all if someone gets too close to their line of fire.
I think they were looking for your funny answer from this morning about maybe if you were to shoot your AI or something like that.
Oh, if they want to know what happens when the player shoots the AI, then they just have to try it and find out.
There you go.
Will the AI react to the local environment? For example, fighting in hot or cold terrain. As far as I know, this is something that, like, I don't know if the mechs are actually affected by the environment in terms of maximum heat capacity based on the environment they're in. If they are, then yes, the AI responds to that. Just naturally through its heat management systems, it knows this is how much heat I can generate. This is my limit. This is how much heat my weapons generate. And again, based on skill level, they will try to stay under that cap as much as possible. So yes, if it affects the mechs, then the AI takes that into account. Will there be non-mech AI support for the player, for example, tanks or escorting civilians? Yes, there will be allied AI that is not in the player lance that can support you in various missions, usually story missions. It could be mechs, it could be tanks, maybe helicopters. So yes. I'm going to answer this just because it's fast. Up to 4-player co-op. Anyone who is not controlled by a human player will be controlled by an AI.
Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, or 4 humans, essentially, and you'll always have 4 mechs. So if you have less than 4 humans, then there's an AI.
Will the AI be more likely to shoot more damaged mechs? Does a unit taking damage build aggro? No, aggro works the other way. Aggro works based on how much damage you're dealing. So if you're putting out a lot of damage, you're becoming a bigger and bigger threat, and the AI will prioritize going after you. If you're not putting out a lot of damage, then the AI will prioritize going after those who are. In terms of if they'll prioritize shooting someone who's really damaged, no, right now they do not deliberately seek out the weakest target and try to go after that. They have a whole host of rules, such as the distance the target is from them, how much aggro it already has, whether it's their current target or not, whether it's in their dead zone and they would have to turn all the way around to be able to shoot it, stuff like that, that affects who they'll target.
We talked about this AI auto eject humans when their pallet takes fatal damage? Not yet, but I think it's something we're pushing to get in there, because again, even if it's just situations like they're not fatally damaged, in fact it's worse. Fatally damaged is fine, let them be fatally killed, but when it gets silly and dumb is when they're not fatally damaged but they have no weapons left and they're just walking around limping like an idiot, and then it's like, oh my god, this guy just needs to like eject or something. So I think that's what's going to push us to try to get that behavior in. Thank you, Quinn, for the thanks on that. You're welcome on the AMAs. Thanks for pre-ordering the game. You guys are great support for us and what we're doing. Will friendly and enemy AI taunt each other? Yeah, like at least the AI, or the enemy AI, I guess I would say. I'm not so sure if your pilots are going to get involved. I haven't really thought about that, to be honest, but there is a notion that we did have in the MechCon mission, although that was more scripted as part of the story mission. But there is this concept in the pilot system that the enemy mechs, I want them to have that personality, kind of like I think MechWarrior 3 probably did that the best. I remember them talking at you, and we definitely are going to see. You saw that in the MechCon mission. You're gonna that is a concept that you'll see in the game.
Will the AI refuse to follow stupid orders, such as ordering a light mech to engage a full assault lance? No, the AI will not refuse to do that. We can explain that either as they are all very subservient and just really love the money you're paying them, or we can explain it as they think you're a genius and you have a grand master plan and a reason for telling them to do that. Personally, I'd like to believe the latter.
Yeah, so maybe you want him to go in there to distract him, then you're going to come in and demolish everyone. That's just another what falls into one of those categories again, that the concept of it is kind of cool for them to say no way or something, but in a situation where a player does feel like they're strategizing how they're going to attack this base, and then they try to send one in, they refuse. It's like it could probably get really frustrating or show up in some weird way when you're not expecting it, or the bugs that might show up where you're just brawling along and you tell everyone to focus fire a target or something, and one of them starts refusing or something. No, I don't think we're gonna. That's not on the top of the list. All right, couple minutes left. Will the enemy lands have? See one more you want to jump on there on the next few? Yeah, it's a
So
bunch on focusing down components and parts. I feel like we've answered those pretty much. Sorry, you've
yeah, I was just gonna say we could sort of lump them all together and just sort of answer it as one big group. Um, so the I'm going to start at Inter's question about does the AI recognize support units and just work down a little bit because they're all sort of related. Um, the AI doesn't explicitly single out support units. It's pretty dependent on the range to the target, how much threat they're drawing, how much aggro they're creating, etc. Um, and tying this in with, are there specific parts that the AI will try to focus? For instance, they have an AC-20 or there's a support mech with a tag on. Would they want to blow that off? Um, the AI does not necessarily prioritize what specific thing to go for. Um, it's more a situation where if something's being damaged, they'll opportunistically try to take that out. But they won't react like a human will, where they're like, "This is a raven. I need to make sure I blow off, this side torso to make sure its support stuff is gone." They'll say, "Oh, it's a raven. I'm just going to shoot it." And in regards to high lethality, um, being able to laser focus injured components, they're they will select that component to be the target, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what they'll end up shooting and hitting. They may decide, I've been trying to shoot this for a few seconds and you're doing a really good job hiding it. I just can't line it up directly with it. I'm just going to take a shot at your leg or your center torso or something instead. Um, maybe it's a projectile and you're able to actually change your velocity, and they'll just miss. Um, Stuff like that. Lots of gameplay situations like that can come up.
I see one here that I want to jump on. Someone, can you choose the number of AI pilots you want to take with you? 1 to 3 or none at all? No humans present outside of the host. Yeah, certainly. I'm not like positive that there won't be a story mission or a particular mission that has some other requirements, but in general, sure, you just have to unassign them, unassign pilots from the mechs in the mech bays, and just go out with what you want to go out with. That would be your decision. Unless that's correct, right, Anders? Like, I mean, anywhere from 1 to like 0 AI, because you start the game out obviously without anyone with you. It's just you, and then you get some and hire some and buy some, and so I don't think there's any real restriction of deciding, I'm just going to go out with 3 this time instead of 4 because I got the other mechs being repaired and I'm feeling confident I'm going to get this job done with 3 and take less tonnage onto the battlefield for less damage you can take or whatever. You can do all that as a commander.
Yeah, as far as I know, you are completely free to pick how many mechs you bring with you in every mission. Obviously you yourself have to go on the mission, but if you don't want any allied lance mates, you don't have to bring them.
Wonderful. Got that bonus 3 minutes there. So I want to thank everyone for coming out again. Been a great AMA both this morning and tonight. Thank you, Anders. Great job. And yeah, thanks for your support on the product, guys. We're working hard on it and trying to make the best game we possibly.
Thank you,
thanks,
everyone,
Tina,
for showing up.
Thank you, guys. See you guys next time. We'll post in the announcements for our next AMA. Thank you for joining.